What is that smell? I am definitely getting a hint of a deal. Oh wait, it's more than a hint. Yeah, these are the best deals, and not just this season, but all year long. In all seriousness, the smartest shoppers know that you get the brands you love with the most savings and cash back with Rakuten. And I know I'm certainly interested in sniffing out those deals. Start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Urban Outfitters, Petco, even Expedia, and getting cash back doesn't mean you have to miss out on sales because those can be stacked right on top. It's easy to use and based on a simple idea. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cashback through PayPal or check. Smells like a perfect deal to me. Download the free Rakuten app and never miss a deal. Or go to Rakuten.com to start getting the most bang for your buck. That's Rakuten.
¿Dónde están los 5 millones de dólares que me robaste?
Gloria tendrá que encontrar el dinero. Su vida y la de su hijo dependen de ello.
Hay que acorralar a la viuda.
¡Tengo mucho miedo, mamá!
El peor de los caminos será el único posible.
A mí no me importa ir a la cárcel con tal de salvar a mi hijo.
En la nueva superserie de Telemundo.
Esta mujer es clave. Que empiece la cacería.
La Jefa. Esta noche a las 10:09 Centro. Por Telemundo.
Hello and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Ann Foster and I'm joined today by a very special guest. I think the person who's been the guest the most times on this podcast. It's the one and only Allison Epstein.
Hello, friends. That's a title I'm very happy to keep. Welcome to me.
The person you're going to have to fight is Lana Wood Johnson, but when we get into the Habsburgs of this season, she's going to start.
I will step back and she can take the title when we get to that part.
Yeah, thank God she's going to be there for that. But so, Allison, before we get started, there are, I think, 2 to 3 important things to say. Last time, when you were on here promoting your previous book, I was like, okay, everybody, here's the 5 specific things you all need to do. And again, today, there's various things to instruct everybody to do. But the first thing we're doing is we're wishing somebody happy birthday. And that is a person named Carmen, whose mom, Irma, messaged me to say that Carmen has recently graduated from UCLA with a degree in history. Huge accomplishment. Congratulations, Carmen. And it's also her birthday. And she listens to Vulgar History with her mom. And so Irma was like, just wanted something special for Carmen having graduated, and it's her birthday. So happy birthday, Carmen.
Happy birthday, Carmen. Congratulations on graduation. That's awesome.
It's a huge accomplishment to get a history degree. And also, I think it's very nice to have a mother and daughter who get along. I was thinking, have I ever had anyone on people we've talked about on the podcast who are mother and daughter who got along? And I thought about it. I was like, not Fredericka, because she and her daughter did not get along.
Not Queen Margot. That was my next guess.
No, Catherine de Medici, not a great mother of daughters. Marie de Guise, I guess, for Mary Queen of Scots, they weren't together, but she was there for her in a way. The best one, and we haven't really talked about it on the podcast, but in history, Catherine of Aragon and Mary I. They had a strong bond.
Yes. Love that for them.
Yeah, but I was like, mothers and daughters. Like, we've had a lot of mothers with shitty sons who become kings or emperors when the mother should really be in charge. But I was like, mothers and daughters, it's not a thing that comes up a lot on this podcast. But also because we've talked a lot of history periods where people weren't hands-on parenting.
You do have a lot of mothers naming daughters after themselves, which I think is a good sign for strong mother-daughter bonds.
It is. And you know who is a good mother? Caroline of Brunswick. To her daughter, Princess Charlotte.
And all the other babies that she found.
She was a woman with a strong maternal instinct, and she just flung it out wherever she could because she had to do something with all that maternal energy. Anyway, Allison, so a couple of things that people need to know. This episode is coming out towards the end of February, and at the end of February, your book is being published.
It sure is. This is a wild time to be Allison Epstein, but my 3rd novel, Fagin the Thief, is coming out in the US and Canada on February the 25th. So if you are in those territories or can get those territories to ship to you, that is when that book will be available.
So Canada and the US for now, but I mean, there's ways the internet exists. People can order things. I hope that your book gets a publisher in the UK, because I think it'd be really cool for people there to read it, just because of the Britishness of it all.
I want that so much. Tits Up
Yeah,
Brigade,
yeah.
if you know a UK publisher, you can send them my information. That would be great.
Absolutely. You know what? Tits Up Brigade, they're in every, they're like my flying squadron. They're just like in every city, in every industry. I'm sure there's somebody somewhere. But so Fagin the Thief, tell everybody what your book is about, because for reasons we're going to talk about in a bit, we're not actually talking about your book today. So talk about your book now.
No, this is my 30-second pitch for the book that we are, in fact, not talking about in this episode. Fagin the Thief is an Oliver Twist retelling. So Anne has already done So This Asshole Charles Dickens, so I don't have to do that. But this book is partly my Fuck You Charles Dickens book. And it is a retelling of Oliver Twist from Fagin's point of view, the notoriously anti-Semitic villain of that book. So it's giving him a backstory from his childhood through how he became the terrible villain that everybody knows from their high school English classes. It's the book of my heart. I love it so much, and I am so excited for people to read it.
I want to just also shout out to people like me who don't know Fagin from their high school English classes, but from High School Musical productions.
Yes. Also very famous from the Oliver exclamation mark, the musical, which I will tell you everybody, like probably 8 out of 10 people I've told I'm writing this book have gone, oh, I played Bill Sikes or Fagin or The Artful Dodger in my elementary school production of Oliver exclamation mark, which I think is great.
Oliver exclamation mark was done by the high school in my city when I wasn't in high school yet. So it was like my older sister's generation. And so the I'm just thinking the trajectory. I forget the name of this actor. He was so good, this high school actor he was the star of all the shows. And so they did Oliver exclamation point one year, and he played Fagin, and it was so good. It's a great role for like a charismatic performer.
It's the best part of that play, no question. Yeah.
The songs are so good. And then the next year they did Fiddler on the Roof, and he played Tevye.
I have one follow-up question. Was this individual Jewish, or was this just quite 2 years for this guy?
This was a Jewish actor, and I think
Good for him.
I think they saw what he did with Fagin, and the next year they chose to do Fiddler on the Roof because of him.
Solid.
I'm pretty sure.
Love that trajectory for him. That's great. We did Fiddler on the Roof in my high school, and I had the lead role in Fiddler on the Roof, by which I mean I played the clarinet in the pit band, and that was the most glorious moment of my high school career.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so today we're not talking about Fagin the Thief. And Allison, can you reveal to everybody where we will be, you and I, talking about Fagin the Thief, which is not in a podcast?
Which is not in a podcast. We're not talking about my book today because Anne and I are going to talk about my book in real life, in person, at the book event that we're doing together in the first week of March. So we will be live and in person on, oh God, I should have looked up the date. It's March 4th, right?
March 4th.
There we go. In Minneapolis, Minnesota at Majors and Quinn bookstore. Anne is my in conversation partner for my book tour stop in Minneapolis, which I'm so jazzed about.
I'm really excited. Listeners, like people who have listened to some of my lowest listened to episodes and answers Q&As will know that Allison and I have never met in person before. So this is a monumental occasion that I'm going to be.
Yesterday, Anne asked me, how tall are you? So we look forward to finding that out in person.
Yeah, exactly. See if we were telling the truth or not. I had to make some real shoe decisions about this event, but I'm so excited to be doing this event. Yeah, and it's free, and everybody who lives in Minneapolis or St. Paul, which I understand is not the same city, but is next to it, but you can get there easily. We're going to be, so Majors and Quinn, which is in uptown Minneapolis, on Tuesday, March 4th. And while I'm in Minneapolis, I'm also going to be doing a meetup for the Tits Up Brigade the next day. So if people could not be offering more to the people of Minneapolis, seeing you and I in person, and then also we're going to be doing a meetup the next day. So anyway, if people, so they go to your website is probably the best thing to register to go to the book event, which is free, but they want people to register.
Yes, AllisonEpstein.com. There's a little events button you can click on. It'll have info for our event. And if you're not in Minneapolis, but you're elsewhere around, I have other events coming up. A couple of them are virtual, so you are all all of the brigade is welcome to attend if you would like to. It was so fun to see Tits Up Brigade members in person on my book tour for my last book. It was the best thing. So y'all are amazing. And I hope to see you again this time.
And I think any Tits Up Brigade member who reads your book is going to get a special treat in the acknowledgements page.
I will neither confirm nor deny that.
Got to pick up a copy and flip to the back and see if there's something there for you. But yeah, so you're going on tour. You have this book. We're going to be talking about the book in Minneapolis on March the 4th. And so I was like, we can't do a podcast about that too, because then we'd be talking about the same thing twice. And then you found spiritually, okay, so we don't, spiritually a story of a woman who's got Fagin energy. Fagin being a fictional character who lived in England, and you found a real life person who lived in America who was also a Jewish thief.
Yes, I found a person who is Fagin energy parentheses positive. So I have a nasty tendency to keep writing books about men. So I wanted to find Fagin vibes positive parentheses Lady Fagin. So very excited to tell this story on the podcast today.
And I'm excited obviously for a gazillion reasons, but one of them is also because this is a Jewish character. And I mean, real life person.
Quite a character though.
Honestly, yes. But yeah, I always want to find people who are not Christian to talk about on this podcast. And yeah, anyway, you found one and she's great. And so this is one of those episodes where Allison is going to be telling the story and I will be listening with the rest of you in rapt attention. So Allison, please, who are we talking about today?
We are talking about Fredericka Mandelbaum, often called Marm Mandelbaum. So that's how I'm referring to her. And my notes have her title as the Gilded Age crime boss and the most devious bastard in New York City. She is fabulous, and I am delighted to tell her story. I'm doing a thing my publicist is going to lose her mind about because I'm on here to talk about somebody else's book, but I read a fantastic biography of Marm Mandelbaum, which is called The Talented Mrs. Mandelbaum by Margaret Fox. I loved this book. I keep calling it The Marvelous Mrs. Mandelbaum, which is not the name of the book. That's the Amazon Prime story. That is my number one source for the story I'm about to tell.
And I do want to also just shout out Gilded Age crime boss. Like we talked about Cassie Chadwick a few weeks ago with Annie Reed talking about her book. So Cassie Chadwick was, she was sort of like the classy version of what Marm was up to. Like Cassie Chadwick was like up with the Carnegies and like in these like fancy ballrooms pretending to be an heiress. And Marm Mandelbaum, again, I've not read all of the notes he sent me. They're very long, but I feel like she's she's more like in the streets, right?
Here's the thing. Yes and no. But this is, if Cassie Chadwick is the uptown version, this is the downtown version. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So I love Marm Mandelbaum just as a name. It just sounds like somebody from like Uncle Scrooge comics or something.
And what I love about this, because we started our episode with mothers and daughters, that's like old-timey slang for mom, because she was just the mob boss of the late 1800s in New York. So
people now would call her mother. They'd be like,
it'd be like Mama Mandelbaum. Yeah, let's go hang out. Yeah, she's the best. Okay, so to start her story of crime bossing in New York City, we have to start with her original young life, which started in 1827. She was born Fredericka Weisner in the city of Kessel. And I asked myself, where is Kessel? And it's Germany now. It wasn't Germany then. Once again, I don't understand Germany, and I refuse to learn.
Can I just say, because it's you and I, and tangents are going to happen, but I have just finished writing a book, Rebel of the Regency, the scandal saga of Caroline of Brunswick, Britain's uncrowned queen. Pre-order soon.
Can we underline, just finished writing a book? Finish?
Oh, yes.
And some of her draft.
I did finish writing my book, but it involves so much not Germany.
Germany.
It's so hard to write about. And it also involves not Italy.
Ugh,
where it's just like, I want to say like she went to Italy. It's like, no, I can't, because Italy is not a thing. She went to Naples. Anyway, but the not Germany of it all, it's like, well, they are German people. They're Germanic people and they speak German, but it's not Germany, and it's so hard to talk around that. So I respect you not learning about it, and I don't think anyone should. Okay.
And we don't need to for very long because this is, among many other things, an immigration story. So it's fine. I'm going to keep calling her Marm throughout this story just because that's easier. So Marm got married when she was 21 to a man named Wolf Mandelbaum, who was 23. They seem to have really loved each other. They have a very nice marriage. And also his name is Wolf, which I think is fabulous. So good for him.
Can I just tell you something? Because you said she's born 1827, right?
Yes.
So I was just being like, when was our last Jewish character born? Rochelle, born 1821.
I didn't realize they were contemporaries.
Contemporaries. Yeah.
That's funny because I completely separate France and New York in the 19th century. They are completely different timelines. So it never occurred to me this at the same time.
Yeah. So she's, but I also like just that she's called Marm. It reminds me of the episode we did about Madame Tussaud, where we were talking about like as a little girl, and we still call her Madame Tussaud, even though she was not Tussaud and she was not yet married, but she's just a little girl and she's little Madame Tussaud. So Marm Mandelbaum,
yes,
she's just
Marm
this little girl and she's already Marm. Yeah.
That's just like Grandma Mandelbaum. She's 21 years old. Don't worry about it. It's fine. So while they were in Germany, both Marm and her husband Wolf probably had jobs of some kind. They were probably peddlers, which is like you've got a little cart and you go around and you sell things. One of the classic jobs available to Jewish people in Europe at this time.
That was the job of Rochelle's parents. Yeah.
There you go. But you don't make a lot of money doing that. So in the 1840s, Wolf went ahead and immigrated to New York City and started to set down roots, and Marm would follow him in 1850. So she was 25.
Giving me Fievel Goes West, an American Tale vibes.
Exactly. Yes, it is. That if Fievel then went to crime.
Yeah.
We'll get to the crime.
An American Tale Part 3. Yeah.
Yes, American Tale Part 3. It all goes to hell. Okay. So they set up in New York City. I think they're in like, I should have written down what the neighborhood is now, but back then it was like Little Germany. So this is where all of the Jewish immigrants tended to go. They would set up their own kind of neighborhood. So they moved there, set up their own their own business, more or less doing the same thing they had been doing in Germany. They're street peddlers, except now it's in New York City. And they're trying to make a go of it here. Over time, they'll have 4 kids together, 2 sons and 2 daughters. So she's literally Mama Mandelbaum within the next. I'm not going to talk about Wolf a lot in this story because he doesn't really do anything, but in a positive way. Like he's never in the way. He's never complaining. He's always just booping about doing his business. And so I just want to say at this point in the story, respect for Wolf Mandelbaum for minding his business.
Yeah, it's a rare and lovely thing in a story on this podcast to have a husband who's not actively ruining he's just like, you do you. Like, you were on the episode, the one about Empress Elizabeth, and she had her like boyfriend who just like planned parties for her and
good
stuff.
guy boyfriend, yes.
Yeah. It's just kind of like, okay, Wolf, it's just like, good for you. Like, just stay out of her way and just like respect the queen who you're with. And that's great.
He knew he was lucky, and he's like, "This is great."
He's like, "I'm Tom Holland, you're Zendaya, like,
yes,
and I'm comfortable with this."
That's very secure, and I love that about him. Okay, so now we have Marm, early 30s, living on the Lower East Side in New York City, being a street peddler with 4 kids and a husband who's fine, and that is a recipe for a pretty standard immigrant life in New York City at this time. But Marm is not interested in having a standard immigrant life. She wants to be rich and famous and fabulous. And so she says, okay, I'm already here working as a street peddler. I'm selling things on the street. What if I start buying things off the street? What if I start buying things from criminals off the street? And that's step 1 from standard business into crime mogul. She starts very small. So it's like a pickpocket runs up to her on the street and is like, I stole this tie pin off of a guy walking by, but it's got his initials on it, so I can't sell it. What do I do with this? And Marm says, great, you give it to me. It's going to cost you 50 cents. I'm going to take it home. I'm going to take these initials out. I'm going to make sure that no one can trace this. And then I'm going to sell it for $5, which at the time, like inflation between 1850 and 2025 is hilarious. So when I'm saying like $5, that's shit tons of money. So
Right. But also this, you just explained so elegantly something that I've never really understood, which is fencing.
yes,
This is what being a fence is.
She's the most famous fence in New York City. She is not herself a thief because she is, as she will be as her career gets better, upstanding Jewish mother of four who goes to the synagogue every Friday night and like just wants to mind her business. But she's the most successful fence, maybe.
And so today, the vibes would be someone who's like, oh yeah, no, this like, I don't know, TV, it just fell out of a truck. Like, do you want to buy it for $50? Yes. Like, yeah, she's that person. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the book, The Talented Mrs. Mandelbaum, has a really interesting chapter on like why fences were so important at this point in history, which I had never really thought about before. But like today, everything's pretty much mass produced. Like a TV looks like a TV, right? And if you have one, no one's going to be able to look at it and say, oh, I know you got this TV from the Best Buy on 48th and Clark, so now I know this is stolen. But back in like right now, which is like Marm Mandelbaum was immediately before the American Civil War. So back then, this was like just before the Industrial Revolution kind of started to hit and mass production was happening. At this point, when she's starting out her career, everything is artisanal. Everything is handmade. Everything is like put into this. You rarely have a mass-produced diamond. You have a diamond that's carved in a particular way, set in a brooch that you know who made that brooch based on the way it looks. People who are making like fine silks are sewing their initials of their factory into the weave of the silk. Like everything is super bespoke. So it's really hard if you're just your standard thief who ran into a store and grabbed the thing. You can't then go to someone and say, hey, you want to buy this thing that's clearly stolen. You need someone who knows how to get it and make sure that no one can trace it before. So like money laundering, but with objects, basically.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know that thing with the silk. That's bananas, but makes sense. And yeah, it's not just like today. It's like, I'm just going to rip out this tag and say like, oh yeah, it's a Chanel purse or whatever. It's
exactly.
Like,
yeah. Take the ink tag off. It's fine. Like, no. You can't do that. You've got to have a team to make sure no one can find this stuff.
Okay. And so I presume she has a team.
She will get a team. Pretty soon she's going to assemble a team. She starts small, like individual thief to thief. And then she starts making money. And once you start making money, you think, okay, how am I going to escalate this situation? She reminds me a lot of Madame Tussauds, actually, because she has business sense like nobody else.
Yeah.
She sees this is working and she's like, I need to set up an operation. So her first stop is to buy a dry goods store, which is like, you know, like the old timey general stores. You can go in and buy like a bag of flour and a bar of soap and like they'll take it off the shelves for you. She gets
like
one
a
of those.
Little House in the Prairie little store sort of thing.
Exactly. Like if you need a ball of twine and some loose oats, that's where you go. And she owns she leases the building at first because she's like lived in America for 5 years. She doesn't have that much money, but she uses this as a shop where she sells mostly legal things, but sometimes a really, really nice piece of fabric that maybe you're getting a very good price on because it's not altogether legal. So she's kind of blending in like, you can come in here and get your groceries. But if you're here on a Tuesday, you could probably get like a small collection of diamonds that I may have stolen from someone.
Yeah. And I love, like with Madame Tussauds, that's a great comparison because just women specifically, who have this business sense and it's so natural. Like today, people like you get a business coach or you watch the masterclass or like, you know, like people don't just to have these skills to just invent this way of being is really impressive to me. It seems like you haven't mentioned any sort of mentor. Like she's just figuring this out.
Yeah. She's like, I see a business opportunity and I took that opportunity and then I took that opportunity and I built on it to make something even better. And what's just so good for her at this point is like Gilded Age New York City is such a lawless place that not only is nobody getting in her way, but people are like willing to go to her. She becomes like famous for her ability to facilitate this kind of crime.
Is there, I don't know if this is coming up in your notes or not, but in this sort of situation, I would imagine she needs to be friendly with local police or authorities or somebody who's going to turn
Yes,
like a blind eye to what she's doing.
it is. And we're going to get into that because she
Okay.
gets so connected to everybody. But for the moment, I'm not sure how much into like New York Gilded Age history you've gotten in previous episodes, but this is like Tammany Hall Boss Tweed era. Boss Tweed was like one of the more famous corrupt politicians in Gilded Age New York because he grafted everything that could be grafted. Like it was comical the amount of money that he stole from people while being in politics. And this is his.
Okay.
So just
Yeah.
like to set the vibe, every single person here is corrupt.
So it's like not a big, like she's doing this, but it's not, she's not doing this in like Salt Lake City. And it's just like, oh my God, Mormons are all there like, Herman, my pills. She's just like, she's one of, okay, it's that, what's that movie? Gangs of New York. She's just
This is
amongst
Gangs
that.
of New York times. This is Gangs of New York is set right now. Yes.
Everyone is doing this. So no big deal.
Yeah.
She doesn't stand out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is a sidebar, but this is a you and me episode, so there will be sidebars. But,
Hell yeah.
A Boss Tweed sidebar. He became like I don't know if it was the mayor or the alderman or something of New York, but he started out as a volunteer firefighter. And the volunteer firefighters in New York City were corrupt at this point. To like underline how shitty it was, you would have two different volunteer firefighter like situations, two different organizations that would be competing for the same fires. And so what they would do is they would go set buildings on fire themselves so that they could race their competition to the fire because you got paid by the fire.
Oh, okay.
So, that's the situation that
This is
city
just,
right now.
I keep trying to think like what to compare it to, but it's just like, it is itself. It's just like, you really set the scene of just like, that's what's happening.
That's where this is. And she looks around, Marm looks around and says, yeah, I can make this work. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's similar, and it's the same time period as like, you know, the Wild West. Like it reminds me of one of those sorts of towns, but it is New York, and that's what it's like.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's one of those old West towns, except everyone also has shit tons of money because it's New York City. So the stakes are high.
And somewhere Cassie, what's her name?
Cassie Chadwick.
Cassie Chadwick is just kind of being like, do, I'm just an heiress. And everyone's like, sounds good to me. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, if you're not actively lighting a building on fire, this is actually not harming anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one other cool thing about Marm at this point is that like she's a pillar of the community in a way at the same time as she's being like the most notorious fence in New York City. Because she, like you said, she needs to get a team of people to help her, like, get these identifying marks out of the jewels and out of the silk and whatever. And so she's staying in Lower East Side, Little Germany, and she's hiring immigrants and other Jews who have hard time getting jobs. And she's like, hey, you want to come in my workshop and help me sell stolen jewels? And the neighborhood is like, yeah, absolutely. This is community development. And so, like, she's helping families. People love her, her neighbors. Yeah. They're obsessed with her because she's the reason they're able to pay rent because she's giving them jobs.
Yeah. This is, it's such a, just imagining this kind of like city that's like 100% all criminals.
Yeah.
And within that, she's like a good one because she's like helping people, giving jobs to like new immigrants. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
The American dream.
The American dream, literally, but with crime. And before I start portraying Marm Mandelbaum as like the thief with the heart of gold who just wants to help the little guy, like there's some of that. She also just wants money and nice things.
Yeah.
Like, to be clear.
Respect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which again reminds me of, no, it's just like Cassie Chadwick also, who is just like, I just want, like when Cassie Chadwick, like again, like her contemporaneous grifter, she was just like, I want furs, I want diamonds, I want to live fancy. And it's like nothing wrong with wanting those things.
Absolutely not. You were a peddler in not Germany. You deserve to have a nice thing. So she eventually stops like receiving stolen goods, just kind of, you know, whatever people want to bring to her. And she starts going out on commission. So thieves will come to her and say, hey, I know you give the best price in town for stolen goods. What do you want? And she starts like, hey, I would really love you to go into that mansion over there on Fifth Avenue and steal that really cool diamond. I think that would be great.
Because she probably knows someone who she could sell that specifically to or something. So
Yes.
she's sort of like a concierge service of like
Yeah.
theft. Yeah.
She starts like now she's a commissioning burglar where she's just like, hey,
Yeah.
I have all the best thieves. I am starting to get my feelers out into society. Let me do a little matchmaking. Let me see if I can get this guy over there because I know you're really good at breaking into houses. That's a great house. Let's set this up.
This is like, in terms of her, just like natural business ability, like just the ability, another person might be like, you know what, I'm the greatest fence in New York City, the end. But she's just like, how can I grow my business more? Bespoke thefts. Like the fact that
Yes.
she kept thinking of new ways to expand is impressive to me.
Yeah, she's not done yet. This is phase 2 of like 7. So-
Okay.
But at this point, like now that she's kind of commissioning stuff, she's
Mhm.
rolling in money now. Like she's modern day millionaire. She now owns 40 houses and warehouses across the city of New York and also into New Jersey. And she's
Yeah.
using them as like stopping places for her stolen goods. So like you take a theft in Boston, she's got a warehouse in Boston where you can come and like take care of the stuff and sell it off. So she's getting an empire.
Yeah. My gosh. It's like the Underground Railroad, but for jewels.
Yeah. And a lot of it is jewels. She liked to specialize in silk and diamonds because she's a girl's girl and she wants to look incredible. So
Yeah. Yeah.
she
I think you
would-
have in your
yeah.
notes that she would like some of the stuff she would, resell, and some of it she'd just keep for herself because she likes
like,
a nice
this
thing.
is really nice, actually. So I'm going to keep this silk and make myself the best dress you've ever seen out of it. The rest of it I'll sell. Yeah. But she wasn't picky. She would fence anything that would make her money. I wrote down 2 of my favorite examples. One of them was a herd of goats that escaped during the Chicago fire. She fenced those.
This is Catalina de Arousal vibes.
Exactly.
This is, yeah. Like a herd of 4-legged things.
I don't know how it happened. I don't know what she was doing in Chicago, but legend has it there were wild goats and she turned them into money.
And she's like, I can fence these. Yeah. Okay, sure.
I got this. My other favorite was 40 boxes full of 50,000 cigars, which I just thought was good.
Well, and I'm just picturing like Tammany Hall and these guys. Like, I'm sure they're like chain smoking cigars all day. Like,
she's like, you want some more cigars that you can smoke while you do crime? I have some of those. Fantastic.
Mhm.
So, business opportunity number 3 at this point. And I want to preface this by saying that Marguerite Fox's book says this is probably apocryphal. This story I'm about to tell probably didn't actually happen like this. However, it's the best story. And you know how I approach history, so I don't care. I want to tell it anyway.
Yeah.
But legend has it that Marm Mandelbaum wanted to cement her legacy as like the crime boss of New York. And so she opened a school called Marm's Grand Street School, where if you wanted to be a thief or a pickpocket or a burglar, you could enroll in this school and take lessons from Marm, and she would teach you how to be the best thief in New York.
Everything about this is amazing, and it's kind of Fagin energy to bring back to your book. But also I feel like there's a kind of person who would open a school like this and actually do it. And there's a kind of person who would say they're opening a school like this, take the tuition, and then not actually teach anybody. And I feel like even though the story is maybe made up, she's the sort of person who would teach people.
She would.
This is not like a Trump University scenario.
No. And what Marguerite Fox did say is, was there a school with a sign on it that said Marm Mandelbaum School for Criminals? No, probably not. And I'll allow that. But she definitely had proteges. Like that we do know for a fact. People would kind of come up in New York criminal society under her wing. And
much like Fagin.
Much like Fagin. Yes.
And the Artful Dodger, etc. The plot of Oliver! Exclamation point.
Exactly. Yeah. Her Artful Dodger, Marm's Artful Dodger, was a woman named Sophie Levy, who like came in. She brought her husband with her, Ned Levy, and they were like, we want to be kind of a young, hot crime couple. And Marm was like, yeah, absolutely. Come work with me. You guys
I can use that.
Smart.
I can use a young, hot couple. Yeah.
So Sophie would go on to be like the most famous lady pickpocket in New York City in this time. And for a while, I thought I was going to talk about her on this episode because she's so cool. She like goes in disguises all over New York and like robs people with her cool husband. Um, and then the cool thing that Sophie does, I don't know if it's real or if it's a scam, but in like the 1870s, 1880s, she makes this big show of giving up crime and going straight. She's like, no, 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 crime is bad. We shouldn't do it. And she writes a memoir called Why Crime Doesn't Pay. And it's it's like 400 pages of all of the criminals that she knew and all of the crime they used to get up to. And she makes millions off of this book. So clearly crime pays for her because she's made a whole business out of it.
Writing a memoir that's like a Lola Montez energy of just being like, how, like, I'm notorious. Great. How can I make money? And people to this day are still, I work in a public library and every month it's just like, who's writing a memoir now? Okay. Yeah. So it's a tried and true way to make money once you've kind of like finished whatever your grift was you were doing.
Yep.
Write a book. Yeah.
Write a book. She thrived. She dies young and horribly in a violent crime. So that's why we're not talking about her, because I wanted the story that was more fun. But she is very cool.
Well, I picture Marm was like born 65 years old.
Yes.
But she also lives at a decent length. So
long,
like everybody,
full life.
Yeah, non-spoiler warning. This story does not end with a violent death.
No, we're
via
good.
home invasion. Okay.
No, all good. Yes. No, so she's working up her proteges in New York.
Yeah,
and she's also like making enemies with rival fences and gangs of thieves because she's so much better at this.
Yeah,
than they
Daniel
are.
Day-Lewis with his hat. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Her enemy was a man called Traveling Mike Grady.
No.
Who ran the Grady Gang.
Traveling Mike.
I only brought it up because it has bushranger energy, and I just like wanted to bring that back.
Traveling Mike. You know what? I was thinking of Ned Kelly a little bit when you're describing some of this, because Marm just like had much more savvy than Ned Kelly did, for instance.
Yeah. Ned Kelly wanted to be criminal with Heart of Gold, but he was criminal Heart of Gold, no business sense.
Yeah. Yeah. He was bringing like a himbo energy to it. And Marm is bringing this like cut, like just the whole, like the fact that she's called Marm and she has these kids. It's just like I'm sure you know people like this. Everybody knows people like this. Just like a woman who runs her household where you're just like, my God, like if you were president of the world, like everything would run. So somebody who's just like, you have soccer practice, you have dance practice, like we're going to this recital. It's just like, oh, what was her name on Desperate Housewives? Bree, that character who is just like, wow, like you're so organized and what you do with it is be like the most efficient suburban mom. And Marm is bringing that energy, but being the most efficient like crime boss on the East Coast.
And
just scaling up.
She's still talking to all of her kids like, and also, did you brush your teeth tonight? Because I will know if you didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Fabulous. One other reason, fun fact, she was called Marm Mandelbaum is not just because she had 4 kids of her own, but because she treated all of her thieves like her kids. She was like the crime mom boss.
Yeah.
So like if one of her thieves that she commissioned to go out and steal something were to get arrested in the middle of the job, she was always there to bail them out. She would pay the bail and she'd be like, you'll get me on the next one. It's fine.
Yeah.
So like everyone was so loyal to her too, because they knew she's got my back. She's giving me the best price. So she pretty much had set up this crime empire where no one was going to betray her because they don't have better options.
And she's like, in this context, to be clear, she's like a good boss.
Yeah.
In the context of like working for various criminals in New York's Lower East Side, like this is the boss you want. Yeah.
She's very efficient. She's very profitable, and she's cutting you a fair deal. I mean, you can't knock that. Yeah. My notes at this point say I have to go on a sidebar about her insane lawyers, so I hope that's okay because I love her lawyers. Marm Mandelbaum had 2 lawyers on permanent retainer, so they were always working for her all the time because she was constantly in trouble with the law. She paid them $5,000 a year in 1880s money.
Old-timey's money. That must be like $5 million or something today.
And it was worth it because these were the most criminal lawyers you've ever heard of in the world. They're so great.
Yeah.
It's the law firm of Howe and Hummel. And I have in my notes, they are the P.T. Barnum of Gilded Age lawyers. They literally represented P.T. Barnum in all of his lawsuits. So
Okay, so literally, yeah.
they're like, their specialty is circus performers and criminals, which is just like fabulous.
This is they would have ads on daytime TV. This is if we don't win your case, it's free. Like that's these guys. Yeah,
they do the equivalent of that. But the way that they win is that, like I said, the most corrupt lawyers in the world. They're bribing every judge in town. They've bribed every jury who's ever juried. They're paying the police directly. So Marm knows, okay, I hired Howe and Hummel. Doesn't matter what they catch me with. I'm going to get off. But my favorite thing about these lawyers is that they published a book in like the 1870s. The book is titled Danger! ! Much like Oliver! ! Which I just thought was fun. And the point of the book, Danger, is the two lawyers describe every crime that could possibly happen to you in New York City. And the ostensible purpose of this is, look at all of these crimes. We know about them. We can protect you from them. We're good people and lawyers. But what the book actually is a book for people who want to do crime. Because they describe in great detail for 500 pages, here's the best way to rob a shop. Here's the best way to rob somebody on the bus. Here's a cool way to break into a bank. Like, it's incredible.
It's so, yet again, like, this just feels like 2025 coded. Like, that somebody would just, like, coming out with a book like this, or the one, like, Crime Doesn't Pay. It just feels like people are exactly like this still now, basically.
They sure are. Yeah. The lawyer Howe of Howe and Hummel also was just quite a striking physical figure, which I mentioned because it's going to come up later. He's like 6.5 feet tall, and he would show up in court wearing like bright purple velvet suits, like covered in diamonds. It's so good.
Yeah. You want a corrupt lawyer?
You got this guy. And he would come in and do like what you imagine a corrupt lawyer in the 1880s would do, like big booming voice, dramatic. I challenge everything that's ever happened. He objects to the lawyer sneezes and he objects. Like, it's
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, everyone I'm picturing is just truly a cartoon character, but they all are. So, yeah.
This guy in particular. Yeah. Attorney Howe. He is drawn in magic marker, and I love him. So that's her business side of things.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, she's also making shit tons of money. And she's using some of the money to expand her business empire, but she's using the rest of her money to kind of buy her way into New York high society, which I love for her.
Yeah.
So my point of reference for this is the HBO miniseries, The Gilded Age, that includes every non-working Broadway actor during COVID. So
yes.
Did you watch that show?
No, I haven't. I know that there's a character in there who, not to say who it is because that'll be spoilery, is Cassie Chadwick at one point. What I'm picturing is Kathy Bates in Titanic.
Yes. That is
just kind of like a working class person amongst these people who were born into wealth.
Yeah. What she ends up kind of doing is setting up like her equivalent of the HBO, The Gilded Age dinner party situation. Like you can picture a Downton Abbey party, and she's setting it up, but in her apartment on the Lower East Side in Little Germany. She's making her own fancy salon, and she's inviting people from like Central Park area. She's inviting your Rockefellers. She's inviting your Carnegies, and they're coming. They're coming to dinner. Because she's so
oh, okay. Yeah.
And she like lives above the shop, the dry goods shop where she got her start fencing. She's got an apartment above with her husband and kids. And they describe her apartment as the Lower East Side Versailles.
Oh my God.
So
okay.
Rich.
She's rich, but and tacky. I'm guessing.
She's rich and tacky. Yes.
Yeah.
She herself, striking figure. She's like 6'2". She's 250 pounds, and she is at any given moment wearing $40,000 worth of diamonds.
I was picturing her very short this whole time, but she's tall. That's even more interesting.
Tall. Yeah.
Okay.
She's commanding when she walks into a room.
This is like movie version Gwendolyn Christie, but a Jewish actress.
Yes.
But like that's the stature we're picturing.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
You're like, oh, fuck, you're in charge. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so she's having these lavish dinner parties in her home with her gilded furniture and everything. But she's also tricked out this house to be like the perfect criminal lair of all time.
Okay, I was going to say, like, it's interesting that she stayed living above the dry goods shop, but of course she did, because what you're about to explain, because I don't know what you're going to say, but I'm picturing a bookshelf and you pull out a book and then behind that is a secret escape tunnel or something.
No, but literally.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through a floor plan of the house. The book I cited literally has a floor plan with little drawings in it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But the front of it is the dry goods shop. That's like mostly legal business. But right behind the counter is this little peephole. And she can see behind the peephole, she has her secret parlor where she sits. Because she doesn't go out and do the business anymore. She's too rich.
Yeah.
She's too in charge. But she'll sit there and watch her associates through the little peephole do the business so that she can come out and stop them if anything is going bad. And she can keep an eye on the law. So she's got her own little secret watch room.
Yeah.
And then in her like sitting room in the living quarters, this is my favorite part of her house, is that she's got a fireplace with a standard chimney in it. But the chimney has a fake front to it. So you could pull down like a screen in front of the chimney. And when you do that, there's a little elevator behind it, like a little dumbwaiter in the chimney.
No.
Yes.
A secret dumbwaiter in the chimney. My God.
So if the cops are coming and she's like etching the marks out of the jewels and the cops come in and she's like, fuck, let me put it in my secret chimney elevator and all the jewels go up in the chimney. Poof, everything's fine.
I have had, I don't think I've said this on the podcast, a lifelong fascination with dumbwaiters. Dumbwaiters are my favorite thing. Like I read about them in like, I used to read a lot of like children's books about people in old haunted houses meeting ghosts or whatever. And there's always a scene where a little kid has to escape in a dumbwaiter. And I was just like, oh, dumbwaiters are the coolest thing I've ever heard. There's like an old mansion where I grew up that you would go on class visits. And I'm just like, oh, there's a dumbwaiter. And I'm just like, I, a little kid, would escape in that dumbwaiter. One of the libraries in Saskatoon where I live has a dumbwaiter. And the first time I went to that library, I was like, a dumbwaiter? And I was losing my mind. And they're all like, yeah, we put the books in it to go to the basement. I'm like, you don't understand. You don't understand. It's a dumbwaiter. So the fact that she has a secret dumbwaiter is everything to me. But also, that's really smart. It's so smart.
Yeah.
Just like, it's giving Sweeney Todd's machine to like
the chair with
the
slide.
bodies away. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's that, but
yeah.
Not non-murderous. Okay. So secret chimney, dumbwaiter, elevator. Yes. Okay.
She also literally has secret passages in the basement that go into the house next door. So if the cops come, she can sneak down through the basement, end up in the other house, leave through the back door. No one's ever going to know she was there.
This is, I love this. Like just everything about this. I didn't realize until this moment how much I love secret passageways, but the fact that she had them, like, why would she ever move? Like this whole house.
And she had those built custom. That did not come with a dry goods store. She had to hire a construction crew of German Jewish immigrants from the Lower East Side to build a secret passage into the next house.
I feel like, and on her like retainer, she has like, like a magician or something where she's just like, what is the best way? And he's like, oh, well, I did this trick back in Germany where I was a peddler magician. So do you know the story, the book, The Devil in the White City, about like H.H. Holmes and the Murder Palace? This is like the delightful reverse of that, where he was building the hotel to secretly murder people. And she's just building this like Uncle Scrooge level, like, although she's now the Uncle Scrooge. I presume one of these buildings is full of coins for her to swim around in. Oh my gosh, this whole thing is literally a Bugs Bunny cartoon, and I'm living. This is amazing.
And I just like this brief pause, like you can imagine how the press handled this incredibly rich Jewish woman living in an immigrant neighborhood, swimming in piles of coins. Like this is an anti-Semitic stereotype, but you can imagine the way that society responds to this is one of two ways. One, look at those Jews, look at what they're doing, and the other, I love her, I would do anything for her. So there's some of that going on.
Yeah. Yeah. This is incredible. Okay.
Just briefly, you said she had like magicians on retainer. She does not have magicians on retainer, but she did have a dozen German Jewish immigrant silversmiths who worked in her house taking initials and engravings out of pocket watches. So,
Did you see the Ocean's 8, the Ocean's 11, but for
Yes.
ladies?
Uh-huh.
Mindy Kaling's character, she was worked for a jewelry
Yes.
family, and then she would take the jewels out of the settings and make them turn the necklace into earrings, and then you could sell the earrings. So I picture
Exactly
this is the
that.
sort of stuff they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the movie with the Jean de la Motte necklace in it, right?
Yes. You know what? This is Jean de la Motte is the spiritual ancestor of all of this, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
If she could have gotten to New York City,
she would have loved it there.
Oh man, this is incredible. This is great. But also thank you for pointing out the way that some people would treat this with the anti-Semitism that I presume was rampant in
that
New
will
York
come into
at the
play
time.
later in the downside of the story. But right now we're still pretty much on top of the world.
Yeah. Okay. And she is. She's the Queen of New York. Oh, what's that song from Newsies?
The King of New York.
She's the Queen of New York.
She sure is.
I'm picturing. I don't know. Somehow, I think there's Newsies are involved in this, or just young boys on the street being like, "Extra, extra, Marm Mandelbaum." She does it again. I don't know.
You know who would work for Marm Mandelbaum? Spot Conlon.
I bet he did.
I bet he did.
That was his boss. Brooklyn. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So last sort of aside anecdote before we get into an actual event in her life. And that's, I want to talk briefly about the kind of parties that she was giving at her house.
Oh, these fancy parties for the fancy rich people.
These fancy parties. Because they were mostly fancy parties. But Marm Mandelbaum was a woman of the world. And so she knew everybody. And so the kind of people who were being invited to these fancy society parties, there's 3 groups of people who would show up. One of them is the fancy rich ladies from uptown who wanted to see this rich lady in her cool house and we'll allow her into our circle because she's got money. Part 2 is all of her friends who are thieves and burglars. And so they're sitting at the same dinner table with these fancy people. And part 3 is the cops, because she's inviting the cops to her parties.
Yeah.
When you were saying she's probably bribing cops to look the other way, not only is she bribing cops, she's inviting them to dinner. They're hanging out next to her thieves. And sometimes she's like, "Hey, cop, you know the law really well. Do you want to help me steal something?" And the cops are like, "Yeah, absolutely. I will help you steal something."
Everyone, I'm sure there's going to be inevitable drama coming up, but it's just this beautiful utopia of thieves, corrupt politicians, corrupt cops. She's just fostered this environment where just kind of everyone just they're just all here for a good time. They're all working together. It's beautiful.
Yes, it's lovely. And many people would be satisfied without that level of success in utopia, but not
She's
Marm.
never satisfied. Yeah.
No.
In Hamilton. Yes.
Much like in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Because in 1869, it becomes time for Marm to escalate her criminal empire into a section I have called Rob That Bank Part 1.
Part 1. Okay.
It's time for bank robbery time, which is amazing. Another interesting thing I learned while researching the story is that bank robberies weren't really a thing very much until about the Civil War era in America. And that's because before this time, there wasn't any paper money. Everyone had coins and bags of gold. And you know what's really hard to escape from a heist with is a giant bag of gold?
Fair. Yeah. Okay.
But Civil War era, we just started using paper money 20 years ago. You can suddenly steal millions of dollars.
Right.
And,
yeah.
So she's got the idea. I know all of these thieves. The Ocean National Bank is down the street. I'm going to put a heist team together and rob the Ocean National Bank.
Wait, it's called the Ocean National Bank?
Yes.
So this is Ocean's 1.
It is Ocean's 1. about that. You're so right.
Yeah. This is like Steven Soderbergh. Like, this is your prequel. Get
it's
on.
right
Okay.
here. And it's a great heist story. So I'm going to walk you through the Ocean National Bank heist.
Yeah.
Because we know everything about it. And Marm is behind the whole thing. She decides who she wants to go in and lead the actual heist team because she's not doing that. She's a pillar of the community. She's not going into the bank
She's watching it all through a pinhole in the wall, just being like,
exactly.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
So she gets a man named George White to be in charge of the heist. And I wrote down the sentence about George White just because I really liked it. George White was a Massachusetts hotel keeper who, in 1864, became accidentally embroiled in a bank heist, and afterward, deliberately embroiled himself in many more bank heists. You know what? We love an entrepreneurial king.
Yeah, it's like you don't know you have a talent for something until you do it once by accident.
Yeah.
And then you do it on purpose. That's what Dolly Parton says, I think.
Exactly. He was the Dolly Parton of his age.
Yeah.
So he gets some accomplices together and they start to kind of case the joint. And so what they do is White keeps making deposits in the bank. So he's getting his own account there with his own money. And as this is stolen money from other heists. So Marm is helping him do this.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, every time he goes in, he starts like schmoozing with the bank president. He's making good friends with this guy and asking him to dinner and taking him out for one too many drinks and asking him questions like, what kind of safe do you use in your bank? And can you describe the safe in more detail? Do you have
what is the combination? Yeah.
Exactly. And then White gets all of this information and he also gets a corrupt bank teller on the inside to give him some help. And they take all of this blueprints and information back to Marm's warehouse on the Lower East Side.
Have you ever seen the movie, aside, but The Sting?
No.
You've never seen The Sting?
I've
Allison.
never seen The Sting. Sorry.
It's one of my favorite movies. It's Paul Newman and Robert Redford in the 70s. Peak hotness for both men. And they're playing con artists in, I forget if it might be Chicago or it might be New York City. Anyway, but they're playing con artists in the 1920s. And the whole thing is just about them putting together a heist where they pretend to be running a racetrack gambling operation.
Ooh.
And when they're assembling the team of who's going to do this, it's just like, we need to get, sneaky Dan Collins. And we need, everyone has a name. It's just like Fish Eyes McCoy.
Yeah.
We need to get all these guys. And then the way that they let the guys know, there's a new heist, it's just like you go to a place, the hotel where you know he is. And the one guy just goes touches his nose with his finger. And the other guy's touches his nose with his finger. And that means they know it's okay, we're going to meet tonight at 7 p.m. at the headquarters. That's how they get the team together. And I'm just picturing that for Marm for this.
I bet you basically. That's what it is. She's got a little signal. She's got something. Yeah. But the incredible thing she does, because she doesn't do anything halfway, she prepares. She is a woman with a plan, and she is going to execute that plan. So she has all of the bank robbers, after they get all these blueprints from the bank, they come back to her warehouse, and they go in the basement, and they build an exact replica of the bank vault in the basement of her house.
To rehearse?
Yes, and they rehearse for months.
This is the greatest story I've ever heard.
She's so good.
Yeah.
So once they've run through the sample bank robbery, it comes time for the actual day of the bank heist. And once again, Marm staying at home like the queen she is. But the dudes go to the bank. They have rented an office in the basement of the bank, which I guess was a thing you could do back then. The office they rent is directly beneath the bank vault that they want to rob.
Do they Bugs Bunny drill a hole in the ceiling?
They Bugs Bunny through the ceiling, Anne. They saw a hole in the ceiling of the office, climb up on a table, go through the ceiling, use their tools to break into the safe now that they're in the safe room.
Yeah.
There's 3 safe doors, and they go through all of them. And then they steal, in olden day money, $768,000. They get into their getaway carriage, and they drive off into the night, and they get away with all of it.
Because there's not cars. Because it's
there's
olden
not
days.
Cars. And they took a weekend to do this because they went in on a Friday night after the bank had closed. And then they went for 2 full days to work on the safe and work on all of the little deposit boxes inside of the safe to get as much as they could. And then they just walked out and left and had all the money. And Marm, who had set the whole thing up, do you want to know what percentage she gave the thieves and what percentage she kept for herself?
Oh, just tell me, because I'm sure it'll be
She
wild.
gave them 10%.
I was going to say 90-10.
It was 90-10.
But still, 10% of $700,000 in old-timey money. Like, that's, It
was a good deal. And, they wouldn't have gotten in without her.
Yeah,
and they, like, some of the stuff they got was bank loans, so she did have to, like, fence some of it.
Oh,
and
like
so there was money laundering involved,
things.
so she did her job.
Yeah.
90-10. And then Monday morning, of course, the bankers come in and they're like, "Great Scott, someone sawed a hole in the floor of my bank vault."
They're just like, "Oh my God, Bugs Bunny doesn't exist yet. So we were unprepared for this strategy." Yeah.
And the newspaper goes nuts because no one knows who did it, but everyone knows who did it. They can't pin it on her.
Yeah.
The quote in the article that I read that I loved so much was Boss Tweed himself, the most corrupt politician in all of history, said, "I couldn't have done it better myself." Which is so good.
Incredible. What's that? There's a movie that's like, first of all, I just need to really reemphasize to you, you need to watch The Sting. I think you'll really vibe with it. The suits that they wear in that are, Edith Head did the costumes, I think. The 3-piece 1920s suits are amazing.
Yes.
But there's that movie, I forget the name of it, but it's like Sean Connery and Catherine Zeta-Jones, and they have to like go through the lasers to like get to the safe, or just, you know, the trope of like people
thing. Yeah.
You have to like dance and like slither. It's like, this is like that, but before lasers. This is just kind of like, all you had to do is like do, 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 do. And there you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Ugh.
Okay, that's amazing. And she got away with it, clearly.
And she did. Yeah. No problem.
And now for a quick advertising break.
When life gets hectic, one of the first things that goes out the window for me is making sure I'm eating nutritious meals and not just getting takeout when I realize I don't have the energy to cook that day. And that's why I love that I can optimize my nutrition this year with Factor. Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, so it's perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. And they have 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, so you can pick meals tailored to your goals and choose from options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. I love knowing that I have Factor meals in the fridge because it means I have a variety of dinner options without any of the hassle of deciding what to make or cleaning up, and they truly are so delicious. I've never been disappointed by a meal from Factor. With Factor, you can reach your goals with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. So eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I'm someone who loves to have a variety of products in my makeup bag for when I want to be a bit more creative, but on a day-to-day basis, I'm really just reaching for a few staples. When I'm relying on only a few products, I want those to be my holy grails. So I turn to Thrive Cosmetics, whose beauty products are certified 100% vegan and cruelty-free, made with clean, skin-loving ingredients, and have thousands of 5-star reviews. So whether you're like me and want a few high-quality staples, or you're looking to stock up your makeup bag for a full glam, Thrive Cosmetics is the way to go. One product I love from them is the Brilliant Eye Brightener. I've already got it in a couple shades, and I've just seen they have a new gold one that I might need to snag too. I love a product that can have multiple uses, and the Brilliant Eye Brightener is just that. I use it as eyeshadow and highlighter, and it's such an easy way to elevate my everyday look. Plus, for every product sold, Thrive Cosmetics makes a donation towards 8 major causes, including those impacted by cancer, domestic abuse, and veteran and education organizations. I love knowing that a purchase I was going to make anyway is also benefiting causes that matter to me. Thrive Cosmetics is luxury beauty that gives back. Right now, you can get an exclusive 20% off your first order at thrivecosmetics.com/thrive. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/thrive for 20% off your first order.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. During tax season, your personal info travels to a lot of places. Between payroll, your tax consultant, and the IRS. If your W-2 gets exposed, that's just the ticket for identity thieves. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it guaranteed or your money back. Don't let identity thieves take you for a ride. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
In humanity's search for other worlds, we found something unexpected.
It's a massive collection of tiny pocket realities, and each one is a story.
But when we explored those stories, things didn't go as planned.
Mr. Darcy!
I am Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Ah, humbug.
What happens when classic stories go wrong? I go in to fix them.
I am Dracula, and I bid you welcome.
Subscribe and listen to Muse, the latest audio drama from Dayton Writers Movement and Realm.
And we're back.
The next part of my notes is called A Series of Anecdotes because I knew I had to tell you particularly both of these stories, but I couldn't find out where to put them. So this is in the 1870s. And one of them is a little anecdote I call Marm Mandelbaum gets her fucking revenge, which I love.
Okay.
So, she had been training thieves all over the city. And one of the thieves that she used to work with was a woman known as Black Lena Kleinschmidt, which I love a criminal name. Fantastic.
Yeah.
They had been like besties because it was two German Jewish ladies doing crime. But then Lena signs up with a rival crime syndicate, and now she's working with the enemy. Might have been traveling Mike Grady or whatever. And Marm decides, no. No one betrays me. No one does this. So she sends one of her student pickpockets to the high society event that Lena is hosting at her beautiful house and has this pickpocket steal an emerald ring from one of the guests at the party. This pickpocket then takes it back to Marm, and Marm sends this ring to Lena with a little note that says, "A gift from your best friend, Marm Mandelbaum. I hope you wear this wherever you go." And Lena says, "Oh, that's so nice. Thanks. We must be good," and puts the ring on. And then she wears it to her next society party where the person she stole it from is attending. And the guy who got his ring stolen is like, "Bitch, that's my ring. What do you mean?" And hires a private detective to catch Lena, who gets sent to prison for stealing the ring.
Oh, it's beautiful. And that is Affair of the Necklace.
Yes.
Level. Sending a note even. Like this is very, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah.
You just imagine her Marm sitting at home being like, "And that's what you get for messing with me, the baddest bitch in New York City." The second story, and this is my personal favorite, is everyone knew about Marm. She was infamous at this point. And so somebody wrote a play that was supposed to be based on her life. It was called The Two Orphans, and it's an absolute classic Charles Dickens knockoff about this sad girl who ends up on the streets and gets taken into this criminal syndicate run by a hideous, old, tall Jewish crime boss who was referred to as La Frochard because it was set in France. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But that was her crime name. And so everyone knew, okay, that character is a caricature of Marm Mandelbaum. It was like the old evil witch character. And so Marm says, "You know what? I want to go see this play." And so she gets decked up in her silk and her $40,000 worth of diamonds. And she gets a private box just for herself. And she makes sure everybody watches as she goes into her box and watches this play. And after the play, she goes up to the owner of the theater and gestures at her incredible outfit and then says, quote, "Look at me. I am Madame Mandelbaum. Does that hussy look anything like me?" May we all be that cool someday.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. I'm going to guess I don't know if this is in the story, but she somehow figured out that she would get 90% of the proceeds from the ticket sales of the play.
She probably did.
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay. So we're in the mid 1870s at this point. Wolf Mandelbaum, remember him? Her husband?
Oh, husband. Yeah.
He dies in 1875 and she never marries again.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what was going on in that marriage. He's literally almost never mentioned.
And she's like, I think in this time and place, like being a married woman would have been important just societally for people to accept her in a certain way. And then being a widow, I think, is also. So I think he served his role of just sort of like allowing her to become Mrs. Mandelbaum.
Yes.
Much like Madame Tussauds' husband was just kind of existed to make her Madame Tussaud.
Yeah, that seems to have been his role.
Thanks, Wolf. You clearly didn't get in her way. And I mean, why would he? Like, he would have.
This is going great for him.
Yeah. No, and if you cross her, you know what happens. He knows what would happen. So yeah.
I like to imagine that he was just delighted that she was happy and he was a real wife guy. That's what I imagine Wolf Mandelbaum to be. I have no proof, but I imagine him being like, hey, that's my wife. Isn't she amazing?
How was your day, honey? Yeah.
I committed so many crimes.
And he'll be like, that's nice. I got this fish half price today.
That's exactly what I'm picturing.
I made you supper. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, she wasn't cooking. She had business to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So, 1878. Marm, now a widow, is like, remember that time I robbed a bank? That went really well. I think I'm going to rob another bank. And so this brings us to the section of my notes called Rob That Bank Part 2. And this time she's going for the big bank. This is the Manhattan Savings Institution, which is now HSBC Bank.
Okay.
So, real bank. And for this, she calls in a new team of people because it's been about 10 years since the last bank robbery. And the leader of this new heist is a guy named George Leonidas Leslie. And he's a fuckboy.
His last name is Leslie?
It is.
That is one of the names in my ancestry. So I'm just going to picture this is a relative of mine.
Well,
so like
for better or for worse, he might be.
a shitty dirtbag. So just picture like an old-timey red-haired guy with a mustache. Yeah.
Perfect. He was apparently really hot and everyone was in love with him. So
that's my ancestor. Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing he used to do, he was so good at robberies and break-ins and stuff that eventually he put out like his little shingle as a quote unquote consulting burglar. So incredible. Yeah. So when people were setting up a heist in like Omaha, Nebraska, they'd be like, I need to bring in a consultant. And so they would bring in Leslie and he would help them come up with a plan. And they would pay him like 20% of whatever they get out of the bank heist he helped them set up. And then he would head out.
I don't see anything wrong with this guy at this point. Okay.
Absolutely not. When I say he was a fuckboy, I mean he couldn't stop sleeping with other people's wives. So that's going on.
Respect.
In the back.
Yeah.
Keep
that's
that in
fine.
mind.
He's hot. He's got a plan. I'm on his side thus far. Okay.
There are two other people involved in this group. There's more than that, but there's two with names I wanted to tell you. One of them is John Nugent, who's better known as Police Officer John Nugent in charge of the 18th Precinct of Manhattan. So,
okay. Yeah.
That helps.
It's a long nickname, but yeah.
Yeah. The second one, I don't know anything about him except that his name is Banjo Pete Emerson, which you needed to know.
Banjo Pete. That's all you need to know. Yeah.
That's all you got. So, on the day of the robbery, Banjo Pete and the police officer and their people show up at the bank. They hold the bank teller at gunpoint. This is not a very sophisticated heist, but what they do have is they have Banjo Pete dress up in the bank teller's clothes and stand in the front window so that no one knows that robbery is happening in the back of the bank.
That's clever, but also I imagine he's also playing the banjo.
Yes, the whole time.
That was his one. He's like, I will do this, but I have to be playing the banjo.
It's on my rider. Please don't worry about it.
I need to play the soundtrack.
And so the cop and everybody else breaks into the bank vault. They make off with multiple millions of dollars. This is a giant heist. This is the biggest robbery of her career. It's not quite as cartoony as the first one, but this is where the money comes from. The one hiccup in the plan is that consulting burglar George Leslie never showed up to the heist.
Oh,
Never showed
okay.
up. And Marm was heartbroken because she thought he was hot and cool and a great consulting burglar. And so she's like, what happened to him? Is he okay? And so after the heist, she starts looking around for him in the city, and they find him shot 3 times in the back of the head outside of the house of the husband of his mistress.
Oh.
So he got caught and he couldn't do the robbery. R.I.P.
Okay, I thought he was. I was worried that my ancestor was going to turn on her or something, but no, he would have been there. Except he couldn't stop his fuckboy ways.
He couldn't. She was so sad. She's like, the quote from the book was, he was such a nice man, which is what my Jewish grandmother would always say. So that just made me feel seen.
R.I.P. to my hot ancestor.
Hot ancestor George Leslie.
Consulting burglar George Leslie.
Okay. So that is, what was that, 1870?
And they got away with it again?
They got away with it. Yeah.
Okay.
Big success.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's the last big success in this story, because now we're getting into the slow decline of Marm Mandelbaum.
Well, and no one's story just goes up and up and up and up and up. Like naturally, there has to be a peak and a valley. Yeah.
She's not done being a badass yet, so never fear.
Okay.
She does. She's never down. She's down, but she's never out.
No. Okay.
So, at this point, she's been crime boss in New York City for, I think it's like 30 years. She's household name. And of course, eventually she's going to trust a thief who can't be trusted, and she's going to get the wrong guy on her team. And this happens to her in the late 1870s. It's a guy named Michael Kurtz. His nickname is Sheeny Mike. You should never trust a man whose nickname is a racial slur for Jews. That's my motto.
I was going to ask, what does that mean? I've not heard that word before. Okay.
Yeah, no, so I'm going to call him Mike because that seems better. But he's one of her thieves on the payroll, and he robs a jewelry store in Boston in 1877, and he gets caught.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets arrested. He gets brought back on the train to New York to be tried, and Marm tries to bail him out of jail like she usually does, but it doesn't work out. And she's like, okay, I have to cut my losses with this guy, send him to jail. Sorry, Mike, I did my best. And he spends 4 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
He would have spent a lot more time in prison, interestingly, but he got let out on medical release because he kept eating soap. And they're like, well, he keeps throwing up and he's going to die if he keeps eating soap, so I guess we'll let him go.
I like this era because people could really come up with plans that no one else saw coming and were so confusing that they worked.
Right. Like, whose plan was that? But I can't knock that plan because that plan worked.
That plan worked. Yeah. So he just, could that work today? A lot of people, I don't know. I don't know if in prison you have bar soap anymore, but if you drink liquid soap or hand sanitizer,
I mean, you're going to die.
The people listen to this podcast from prisons. Something to consider.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Worked for him.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets let out in 1881, I think.
Wait. Okay. I don't know where the story is going, but so far I'm like 10 out of 10 for guessing the next thing.
Yes.
So was he in prison like Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons, just being like, I hate you, Marm, and just like obsessing about wanting revenge on her? Yeah. Yeah.
Of course he was.
Okay. So literally Sideshow Bob.
Second he gets out of prison, he's like, hey, police, you know that Marm Mandelbaum bitch? She's been fencing stolen goods for 30 years. And the cops then come in and arrest her for being his fence.
Because she's too tall to escape in the dumbwaiter. Yeah.
Yes. And I think she's also like, I know all of these cops and I know all of the judges. So fucking take me in. Whatever. I don't care.
Fair. Yeah.
Everybody knew. Yeah, of course she's a fence. Literally, this is not news to anybody, but it's very hard to prove that someone's a fence because you're not catching them in the act of stealing anything.
And no one's going to testify against her, I would think.
Right. And the way the law was back then, it wasn't enough to catch someone fencing stolen goods. You had to prove that they knew that they were stolen. Because if you did it by accident, that wasn't a crime. And so what she does is, well, first, she gets her 2 circus ringmaster lawyers on the case, and this 6-foot-tall man in his purple velvet suit delays the trial for 2 years on bullshit. He's just like, she can't come to court today. It's raining too much. And like, this worked until 1883. They just put the fuck off. But eventually,
you still see that strategy literally today in various high-profile trials. Just like delay, delay, delay. Yeah.
Yep. And eventually, in 1883, it went to trial, and Marm Mandelbaum got up on the stand in her silk and her diamonds and said, I had no idea that nice young man was a thief. This is news to me. And that didn't work because...
No, really?
Of course it didn't. But she didn't go to jail. She was fined like a couple $1,000s and whatever. She was rich. But
to her, that's like, it's like the equivalent of like
to her.
A cup of coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. But the point of it is, this is the first time she's ever been convicted on anything.
Right,
this is the first time the system hasn't bailed her out. And so this is a sign that, okay, maybe you can't run the city the way that you used to. Maybe the law is catching up.
So why do you think that is? Was the city getting a bit less Wild West, criminals run everything-y? Or was this like she's Jewish and we don't like that anymore thing?
Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because I don't think it's that. I don't think that helped her. But I think what happened was, in 1883, a brand new district attorney comes to New York City. His name is Peter B.
Theodore
Olney.
Roosevelt. Sorry.
No, sorry. He's just a man named Peter.
Oh, okay.
However, this is the first DA that New York has had in 75 years who was interested in stopping crime instead of doing crime.
This guy sucks.
I know. Ugh. So he's
if there's a movie of this, pessimistically, he would be the hero of the movie, you know?
I know.
You know, like they would bring, and he's like, I'm going to bring Law and Order to here. And it's just like, you're ruining everything, Peter.
You're ruining the cool movie we were watching, Peter. It's no good.
Yeah. Okay. So he comes in and he's like actually doing law. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he just comes in and he's like, what is this clown car?
What the fuck is happening here? I don't know if this was the same time as like the Comstock Act, which was, I think it was similar time, which is like, we have to clean up the vice in New York City, which like, to be fair, there's a lot of vice in New York City right now. Like literally everything is crime. So like, fair point to them. This is probably a good idea, but I'm on Marm's side because of course I am.
So in terms of all this, I'm just like, right, okay, I'm siding so hard with the criminal element, but I feel like with Marm, she was stealing from the already rich, right? Or
mostly.
No? Yeah. So it's
she was
not
stealing
like
nice ass things.
She was stealing stuff from kind of like Cassie Chadwick. Her victims were not people I am particularly sympathetic towards.
Right.
And
also, she's not out there whacking people. I don't think she ever kills anybody.
Yeah. So. Like there's other people, they're like Gangs of New York, the movie. You know, a lot of shitty stuff those gangs are doing. But like, I feel like I don't know. I support women's
rights and wrongs.
Rights and wrongs. And in this instance, I think like we're seeing, you know, a woman who is just like, there's a similar gang that we haven't talked about on the podcast before, but I know you know about them, the 40 Elephants in England at this same time. And they were also just kind of like, here's what we're doing. Stealing jewels from the rich, like pickpocketing from the wealthy. It's just like, we're not killing anyone. We're just getting nice things so we can look glamorous. I see nothing wrong with this.
No, absolutely not.
And that's my point of view on this podcast. Don't do crimes, everybody, but oldie-timey crimes, respect. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Peter B. Olney, DA of New York City, does not agree with you. So.
Okay, Peter needs to get his priorities. It's like, yeah, go after the vice that's like, you know, people being assaulted, people like burn the volunteer fire brigade, burning down the houses. Go after them. Marm is just like an entrepreneurial mom who's just like a lady. She's just a lady with a dream who likes to throw a dinner party. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like Peter, he had bigger things to worry about.
I would think
But
so.
I guess that guy, the guy from the jail, the Sideshow Bob guy, I guess he really presented this on a platter. Like, hey, here's this criminal, and I'm willing to testify against her. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Peter sucks.
Peter sucks.
New York is, you know how people say like, oh, New York used to be great, and then they like cleaned it up, and now it's this like tourist city. I'm like, yeah, I see what you mean now. Yeah.
Yeah. So what Olney does, he wants to catch Marm in the act of fencing because, like I said, you have to be proven that you knew you were
that you're doing it. Is he sort of like a Javert type character?
Yes, but almost, because I'm about to introduce you to the Javert of this story, which is the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Are you familiar with the Pinkertons?
Tell everybody.
Okay, I don't know everything about the Pinkertons, but this is like the first private detective agency in the US, and they're sort of like who the cops would call in when you need to go undercover on like a sting operation.
Yeah, they're sort of like Marm's operation, but like nerds and like not cool.
Yeah. They're Sherlock Holmes meets like a spy meets like a tax auditor, I think.
They're sort of like, if this was a TV show, it would be sort of like CSI, olden days. Like it's just sort of like a crack team of people trying to solve things. But again, in this instance, I'm on the side of the criminals. So I think they're nerds. I think
they were also union busters. Fuck the Pinkertons.
Yeah, and I think they still are. They had something to do with, I think, at some point when this was on Drunk History, Abraham Lincoln, I think they were like his personal bodyguards at one point or something. They're just like, like there's like a book out that's about like the first like lady Pinkerton. It's like she was the first like woman private investigator or something. Anyway, so they come in, yes, and they're just like, we're nerds and we're here to stop crime because we don't want New York to be cool anymore. Yeah,
exactly. And so one of the Pinkerton spies, like goes undercover as one of Marm's thieves. So he like gets into her inner circle.
Okay, that's cool.
It is kind of cool.
Yeah.
He uses the pseudonym Stein, which like try harder is all I'm saying.
Look at me, I'm Jewish.
Hello, it's fine. I'm Mr. Cohen.
But how about that Hanukkah?
Yes. Exactly what it feels like.
I brought my dreidel. I'm Mr. Stein. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So it takes him like 6 months, which is hats off to Marm for 6 months having a Pinkerton working in her thieving factory, and he can't. And he wasn't able to.
Yeah, good.
But
good.
Finally, he works with like a silk vendor, so like they hide something super secret in the silk. Like they stitch some initials in there so that they can identify this particular one as being stolen. Yeah. I don't know all of the ins and outs of how you trace stolen silk, but all I know is that Marm didn't sufficiently criminally launder this particular bolt of silk. And so it was enough for the cops to pin her as selling it on purpose.
I keep just thinking of this in terms of like every movie I've ever heard of, but there's that movie, The Departed, where it's like a guy goes undercover with a gang, but then he like kind of starts to side with the gang. This would be also a good story as well. Like I think the movie that we need is the Bugs Bunny Ocean's 1. But I think that this could be a compelling story as well, because I think to get a movie made these days, you need like a propaganda angle, and I think you need like a white man as your hero. So I think this might be the way in. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so he's not won over by her gang.
No.
And instead is a nerd and rats her out. Yeah.
Here's the thing though. When the cops come to the dry goods store to arrest Marm Mandelbaum in 1884, the Pinkerton agent comes with to be like, haha, I got you. And Marm, bless her fucking heart, punches the Pinkerton spy in the face.
Yes, I thought she was going to say, oh, I thought he was a nice boy. No, better.
No, she said, fuck you, and she punched him in the face.
I hope she had a handful of rings on. Yeah.
Of course she did. She had diamonds everywhere, and she's 6'2". That hurt.
Yeah, good. Well, and you know, the way that she took people in, I don't know at this point, like how legit, like how much she did this anymore, but like he described as sort of like this family, like in Fast and Furious. And these people, she saw them as like her children. So it's like betrayal from like her child. Yeah.
It's exactly like that.
Punching him in the face is the correct response. In this instance, I condone violence, obviously. Yeah.
Yes. So she gets taken to jail to await her hearing to see if the case would go to trial. And this is where the papers go fucking nuts. Like, this is where they're like, we have a rich Jewish lady who did a crime, and all of the political cartoons from this era are like the worst thing that you can imagine what they are.
Yeah.
But Marm, bless her, pretends so hard. They interview her. They're like, have you ever done a crime? Marm Mandelbaum, crime boss. And she says, quote, I have never stolen anything in my life, unquote.
Yeah.
Which, okay, might be true.
Might be true. Have I acquired stolen goods, laundered them?
Yes.
Did I hire people to rob things? Yes. Did I ever? No. So she's being, no, factually true.
Factually true. She goes to her hearing dressed to the nines. Her lawyer comes dressed to the nines and motions for the charges to be dismissed so many times that the judge says, quote, you're making too many motions, sir.
I thought the judge was going to be like, you know what? I give in.
No, he's like, please shut up, you weird man. What's happening?
Yeah.
But Marm's defense, basically, like she says it in a cool, plausible deniability way, but she says, listen, do you actually want me on the stand talking? Because if I
she's
go,
friends with all the cops. And
you
she's
have
friends
no
with
idea who I could bring down with me. I could bring down the entire police office and all of the politicians in New York. If you want me to testify, I can testify. And that doesn't work, which is their mistake. So bail gets set for her at $10,000 and her trial date is set. I want to say that again. Bail was set at $10,000 in oldie-timey money. Bail for a murderer at this time was $500.
Okay.
So.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Again, she can afford this, but like that's wild. Yeah.
And she paid it. She's like, yeah, sure, have $10,000. I don't fucking care. I'm going home. And on the day of her trial, the entire city comes to the courthouse. It's a press circus.
Yeah.
And they're waiting for the trial to start. And they're waiting for the trial to start. And they're waiting. And then the foreman comes out and is like, I'm so sorry, Your Honor. We can't find her.
No, you can't.
You can't find her. Where was she? Great fucking question. Let's go back to the night before.
Okay.
Because she went into a carriage to visit with her lawyers, circus criminal lawyers, the night before the trial. A totally normal thing. Everyone would do that. The Pinkertons follow her because fuck the Pinkertons.
Yeah.
And they see her walk into the lawyer's office. And then 3 hours later, they see her leave and get back in the carriage and go home.
But that was somebody else.
Or do they? Because they saw a 6'2" somebody else dressed like Marm leave. Was it her 6-foot-tall lawyer wearing the velvet suits? Maybe. We're not sure. I think so.
So this is like, again, like she's got a winning strategy. Like with that one bank where they got Banjo Mike, where they got him to dress like the bank teller and stand in the window. She's just like, people don't pay it. Just wear the clothes.
Yeah,
okay,
it's fine.
Okay.
So her lawyer goes out as the decoy into the street, and Marm sneaks out the back with her son, and they have their suitcases ready, and they get on a train and run away to Canada.
To Canada.
To Toronto.
No.
They've got suitcases full of jewels, and they show up in the city of Toronto. And everybody in the city of Toronto is like, hey, isn't that woman with the suitcase full of jewels the world's most famous criminal fence?
Yeah, I do want to say that Toronto and New York City, not that far apart. Yeah.
No.
They would have gotten the news. Yeah.
To her credit, she immediately leaves Toronto and goes to Hamilton, Ontario.
Hamilton, Ontario. Shout out to Hamilton, Ontario. I know people there. And I bet you never thought we'd say the name of your city on this show, and here we are.
And here we are. So they are immediately arrested upon arrival in Hamilton, Ontario.
Okay.
However, once again, Marm is too smart for them because she can only get arrested if they know that she has a suitcase full of stolen goods. But she's taken all the marks off the jewels already, so it looks like she's just traveling with a suitcase full of diamonds, and they can't pin anything on her.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that those are stolen. They can't prove it.
Yeah.
And at this point in history, there are no extradition laws between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah.
So the cops in New York, that asshole DA sends a message to the city police of Hamilton, Ontario, and says, "Hey, I know it's not legally required, but could you please extradite Marm Mandelbaum to the court? We're currently waiting for her. Her trial is assembled." And the police of Hamilton, Ontario ghost him. They never respond.
You know
like,
why?
Meh.
Because they get it. They know that they're like, this is great for us, for tourism, to have this person in our city. Like, well, and I'm sure she's like, hey, if I give you these diamonds, would you not extradite me? And they're like, cool. And she's like, I'm having a dinner party. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
So she's in fucking Hamilton, Ontario.
Yes. And she can't go back to New York because the second she sets foot in New York, she's going to get arrested. And so she's there with her son. And she's like, you know what? We can work with this. We've been in worse places than this. She sets up a brand new store on Main Street in Hamilton, Ontario.
A dry goods store?
It's a ladies' underwear store. But she uses it the same way she used the dry goods store. So she's like, hey, if anyone happens to have anything they want to get rid of in Hamilton, Ontario, stop by my underwear store and I can probably take care of that for you.
I don't know much
about it. Works.
Like, the thing with New York City, huge city, port city, like people are coming and going all the time. Hamilton, I don't know much about, but clearly there's she saw an opportunity and it was able to, I don't know. I was just looking to see where Cassie Chadwick was from, because she also spent time in Ontario. I'm like, could another movie idea be a Thelma and Louise situation?
Oh my God.
Of the two of them
would be the mother-daughter dream team.
Yeah. Yeah, if the two of them, anyway, I know that she was somewhere in Canada. I was wondering if they might have seen each other. Okay, so Hamilton, Ontario, underwear store. It's all just starting again. It's just like Marm Mandelbaum 2.0. Yeah.
She's like, all good. She's in her 60s at this point, and there's less crime in Hamilton, Ontario because there's less people and also less diamonds. So this is not as successful. But like,
no, and I'm thinking like the banks wouldn't have as much money. Like she's downgrading her lifestyle considerably.
Yeah. And she's pissed. Like, to her dying day, she's like, I fucking wish I was in New York City right now. Those were the best days of my life, and I hate it here. Sorry to Canada. I'm sure it was lovely.
This is fine. I was just double checking something else as well. So we mentioned this in the Cassie Chadwick episode, but there is an incredibly long-running Canadian show called Murdoch Mysteries, which is about a man in oldie times Toronto who solves murders. Pinkertons have been involved, I'm sure. Margaret Atwood has had a cameo role in it. Former Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper has been on it. It's an institution in this country, and I've never actually watched it. Anyway, they had a Cassie Chadwick episode, I guess. And I was like, well, they have to. Like, these writers, it's like the Grey's Anatomy's writers or Law and Order. It's just like, they must be frantic for new plot lines after this many seasons of like a 22 episode season. I'm like, they must have done Marm Mandelbaum. Like, she was in Hamilton. She's in Toronto. They could have, and they haven't yet. If any of the writers of Murdoch Mysteries are listening to this,
it's right here. It's so good.
It's on a platter for you right here. You could do a several season, like episode arc. Marm Mandelbaum could come in. She could help solve some cases. She could be sort of like an Irene Adler figure, like with Murdoch. You know who's on that now is the dad from Kim's Convenience. He's on there now. It's like a Chinese detective.
Nice.
In olden days Toronto. Anyway, shout out to Murdoch Mysteries. I'm honestly astonished but maybe like this book just came out 2024. So they're probably currently filming a Marm Mandelbaum episode because they just found out about her. Or maybe they're finding out about her right now from this podcast. Again, shout out to Murdoch Mysteries. I would love to make a cameo appearance on your show. Okay, so she's in Hamilton. She's just like, I'm not in jail, but is this any better? Hamilton, Ontario. Yeah.
Fine. And she has room for one last caper.
Please. Okay.
It's a sad one, but it's also badass. So I love it. It's the early 1890s. Remember, Marm had 4 kids, and one of them married a New York politician and died in childbirth in the early 1890s in New York.
Boo.
And so Marm is in Hamilton.
Boo to dying in childbirth.
Yeah.
It rips away so many cool people.
The best mom. And she's like, I haven't been able to see my kid in years because I can't leave Canada.
Because as soon as she gets to New York, she's going to be like put on trial.
Yeah. But the funeral's in New York City. And she's like, well, I'll be goddamned if I'm going to miss my daughter's funeral. And so
a good mom. Okay.
She sneaks back into New York City in disguise.
I was going to say in disguise.
She hides in the secret passages of her old dry goods store. And she only comes up for like the body viewing in the Shiva in the house. And she doesn't go to the graveyard because that's where the cops are. But she's like, I had my time with my daughter. We had our own little private mourning. And then she gets back on the train and sneaks away to Canada. And
do you know what her disguise was? Was it a mustache?
I have to believe it was a fake beard and a hat, but I do not know.
Because I think with her height, the best course of action is to disguise herself as a man.
Agreed. I think she could have done that.
Yeah, I think like a 6 foot tall woman would be noticed at the
probably
Shiva for the daughter of a 6 foot tall woman who is currently an on the run criminal. You know, those passageways come in so handy.
Really,
I love it. Yeah. And so she got in and out. I love that. I love that for her. Yeah.
And so she goes back to Canada. She's in her late 60s. The newspapers all over America falsely report her death in like 1893. And she has to write a retraction to the newspaper and be like, JK, I'm actually not dead. I'm still here. I'm just in Canada.
Iconic. Love it. Yeah.
But she does pass away in 1894 of kidney disease, natural causes, age 68, which for oldie days, pretty good.
For oldie days, for someone living the life she was living, where like my ancestor was just shot, you know, like anyway. She
Your ancestor, George Leslie, the consulting burglar.
Yeah, you know, like people are just like in this criminal world of New York City, oldie times, like living the life she was living was a dangerous life of criminal, like another gang boss could have killed her or whatever. But she didn't. So 68, kidney disease, still too young, but honestly, she lived a life. Yeah.
And I have one last anecdote for the road about her funeral because
I'm curious where she was buried.
She was buried, I believe, in New York.
In New York, okay. So her dead body. She didn't go back to New York until she's dead. Okay.
Right. But
I don't think she would want to be buried in Hamilton, Ontario.
No, I think that's why I'm thinking, fuck this, no. I want to be back in my cool city with my daughter.
All love to Hamilton, Ontario. I know people who live there, but like, come on, she doesn't. You know, Marm didn't want to be there. Yeah.
But because she was such a badass, people were like, she can't have died of kidney disease at age 68. That's not what would happen to Marm. I bet you she faked her death and she's on the run and now she's living in New York City. So there were rumors that she filled her coffin with rocks and then went off and lived for another 40 years. And some people think that she showed up at her own funeral where they buried the coffin full of rocks and picked the pockets of the people at her funeral, which I know isn't true, but like to believe is true. It's spiritually true.
It's spiritually true. And if she wasn't there in person, then I think she was there as in ghost form.
Yes.
Picking pockets as a ghost. Yeah.
It's like, I take this with me to the afterlife.
Yeah. Yeah. The coffin not full of rocks, full of diamonds.
Full of diamonds. Full of 50,000 cigars.
Full of goats. Yeah. And that is the saga. Is that
that is the saga of Fredericka Marm Mandelbaum.
This is, it has so many things I know you love.
Yes.
And that really makes me happy. Like disguises, bank robberies, heists, just like the lawyers,
so good.
The lawyers are very Allison Epstein coded, I have to say.
I would have written them if they weren't real.
Yeah, and the fact that he actually was the lawyer for actual P.T. Barnum, like, of course he was.
Perfect.
So we're going to score her.
I've been thinking about this ahead of time, trying to do the score in my head to see if she's going to get a 23 and end in Allison Epstein corner.
I think, here's the thing.
It's hard to say.
There's some things she's going to score highly in, and there's one thing she's going to score lowly in. Yes. So we'll see how the numbers turn out. The first one, I'm going to go out of order because I think some of these are given. Scheminess.
If this girl doesn't get a 10, what are we doing here?
What even, like, honestly, like, she was everything about her story. Like, just going from being like a peddler in not Germany to the way that she kept leveling up her business.
Yeah.
When she didn't need to. She could have happily just retired effectively on the money she was making, but she was just like, couldn't stop scheming.
Her whole job was schemes. She wasn't even executing the schemes. They just called her to come up with schemes.
She was sort of a consulting schemer. And just like the layout of her apartment.
Yeah.
10 out of 10 for the dumbwaiter.
The sneaking out of the lawyer's house to get on a train, A+ scheme.
Oh my gosh. And they were great schemes, and they were like, in this time, like, if she was today, her schemes would be more sophisticated. But back then, no one was expecting these schemes. You could just Bugs Bunny cut a hole in a bank.
Yeah.
Like, you could.
Why
just,
would you be more complicated when a Bugs Bunny through the bank works?
Yeah, or just like sending out your lawyer dressed in your dress. Like, that's all you need to do. Like, basic schemes, but effective. And she knew she didn't have to complicate things. 10 out of 10 for schemes. My God. Scandaliciousness. I'm curious what your thoughts are about this, because I love it, but in the context of pre-Pete New York City, she was just everyone was kind of like, she didn't stand out. Or did she?
She did stand out. She was famous for being so good at what she did. Like, she was a public figure to the extent that they were writing plays about her, and then she would attend them and watch them. I will say I'm not going to give her a 10 for scandaliciousness, because she was like the good mom neighborhood watch captain who went to temple every Friday and
she was married. Like, there's not sex scandals. There
is no sex scandal. There's no
my ancestor, Mr. Leslie, would score highly in scandaliciousness, but she, I think, in the time and the place, like, she was at a certain, like, this is at least a 5. Just everyone living in New York City at that time is at a 5 of scandaliciousness, because that the city was that. But you're right, like, she was like a good Jewish mom. Like, so I don't know, where would you put her?
I'm thinking a 6 or 7.
Okay, I'm gonna go 7 because we're gonna round up.
She deserves it.
Because I'm sure she always rounded up when she was adding things.
Yes, she did.
Except for payment for her workers. So, significance.
This is the one I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, in the book, the talented, the marvelous Mrs. Mandelbaum,
which is not the name of the book.
Does the author explain how she heard about her? Because she was so famous in her time, but there hasn't been a book about her. She's not been on Murdoch Mysteries. Like, how famous is she now? I don't know.
Yeah, not terribly famous now, but there are like the trial, her hearing and her not showing up at the trial was in every single newspaper ever. So like the New York City Archives has you can follow every second of that. So at the time, that was like the O.J. Simpson trial of 1883 or whatever it was. So at the time, very significant.
And if you think about her impact on New York and on all the people who she trained, how many crimes were committed because of her, like, so many things would zoom back into her influence. Like, how many thieves got their start at her academy, her influence on later generations. But also, I think that she was, in all sincerity, providing work for all of these new immigrants. Like, she was helping people get their feet in this new city. And then how, those people, and what did their descendants do? Like, how did they settle in? Like, she was sort of elevating the whole neighborhood and the whole community in a way, I think.
Yeah.
But at the same time, her significance, I mean,
she's not like a Teddy Roosevelt.
She's not like an Al Capone. You know, it's not like she was significant in the time. Like, I think the ripple effects of her life continue on spiritually in all of today's grifters. I don't know, for significance, I might say something like a 7 as well.
Oh, I was going to say a 5. So let's say 6.
6, I think. And then this is where I think she's going to not score amazing, which is a sexism bonus. I don't know if that held her back at all.
I think she said, fuck that. I don't care.
It doesn't seem like anyone was ever like, a woman crime boss. No. Like, it seems like everyone's like, oh, she's like these terrifying like PTA moms. They're just like, oh man, yeah, no, you can run the bake sale. Yeah. Like she's,
yeah.
And
to a certain extent, it might have helped her. Like, it gave her notoriety in the criminal sphere, but it also was like, do you really want to bust the neighborhood mom for crime, or would you rather go after Banjo Pete? Like, that seems like a more obvious criminal to crime.
And then also when she, like the first time she was arrested, she was like, me? What? Crime? Like
a little old lady, me?
Like, she could lean into it. Like, I don't think sexism, honestly, Allison, I'm like, even anti-Semitism, I'm like, did anything stop her?
Nothing really did. The one thing that this book did note is that the kind of jobs she would have been able to get in America as a woman and as a Jewish woman, there were not a lot of options for her other than peddling in crime when she got here. Like, she was not going to be able to say, I'd like to become a medical doctor and then go and make millions like a normal way. So it's not nothing, but I agree with you that basically nothing stopped her.
It's like, oh no, she couldn't become a medical doctor. It's like, we're better for it. She shouldn't have been.
Good.
This is what, but yeah, no, you're right. It's not nothing. But so she kind of, I think just in a very canny way, she's just like, okay, this is the world. This is how the cards that are stacked up against me as like a Jewish woman, immigrant. And here's where I can thrive, and let's just do it. So I don't know, like sexism, I don't know, like a 2 or something.
I was going to say a 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
A circumstantial 2 for being the 19th century.
This gets her just slightly out of the Allison Epstein corridor, which for people who don't know, when Allison is on this podcast, generally everyone who she talks about ends up, without us planning it, with a 23.
Every time.
Every time.
But not this time.
No, this time it's a 25.
A 25? That might be my highest score.
Let me see. So 25. Oh, this wasn't an Allison episode. Rochelle has a 26.
There we go. Okay, but she spiritually should be right next to Rochelle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just putting her in here officially in my document. So at 25, let's see. Yeah, Catalina de Erosa 23.5, Lola Montes 23. Like these are the Allison episodes. Empress Elizabeth 23, Christopher Marlowe 22.5. This is the Allison cul-de-sac.
Yeah, where they're not significant at all, but they're tremendous fun to talk about.
Yeah, and often it's like there's a lot of scandal.
There's always a scheme.
There's scandal and there's scheming, but often not much else. But always a fantastic story. So just a sec. Yeah, so I have all the numbers written in. Amazing. I mean, amazing. Say the name of the book again that is not your book you're promoting, but this other person's book, please.
It is called The Talented Mrs. Mandelbaum by Marguerite Fox. It came out last year. Highly recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, this was like cool hour, 45 minutes of the upper level highlights of this story. But reading the book, like, for me personally, I'm like, I need to see this floor plan.
It's worth it for the drawing of the dumbwaiter. You lose your mind.
Oh, I will. I shall. But then also, what is your book that you are promoting?
Yes, the book I did write is Fagin the Thief by me. Historical fiction retelling of Charles Dickens's Oliver Twist. If you like a story about a historical Jewish dirtbag thief who's a terrible person but also delightful, this book is for you.
I mean, it's the two stories, like they coincide so beautifully, I think. Just kind of like this real life person, the character that you're reclaiming from Charles Dickens's shitty portrayal of this guy.
I'm so glad you did. So this asshole Charles Dickens, so that this episode didn't have to be me yelling at Charles Dickens, because that's not fun for me.
Yeah, no. So if the listeners, if you haven't heard that, it's on the main feed. I think I released it one year at Christmas to everybody. It was originally a Patreon episode, but then I put it on the main feed. So yeah, So This Asshole Charles Dickens. Just scroll back through your vulgar history on your podcast feed. What else, Allison? What, I mean, you're going on tour. You're going on book tour. Your book is being published. So where can people? Yeah, where can they find you?
My book is being published on February the 25th. And to find out everything about that, including where I'm going to go, where I'm going to be, how to pre-order a book if you want, it's all at my website, AllisonEpstein.com. The only social I'm really on these days is Instagram at Rapscallison, Rapscallion with an S. And I'm also on Substack.
I was going to say Substack.
There will be a Marm Mandelbaum newsletter once I have time to write newsletters again. But
yeah.
I write a Substack called Dirtbags Through the Ages, which is people who suck in fun ways sent to your inbox every other week through Substack. And I'm taking a brief hiatus while book launch stuff has completely taken over my life. But I will be back in hopefully March with more of that.
And so, listeners, you can see me and Allison in person in Minneapolis, a city. Have you ever been to Minneapolis?
I have, yes. Lovely city.
They have a flower museum.
Which is closed the day we're going to be there. We've already checked.
Which is tragic. I know. I love a specific museum. Anyway, so we're going to be in Minneapolis at, what's it called? Majors and Quinn?
Majors and Quinn, yes.
Majors and Quinn, the bookstore, on Tuesday, March 4th. I think it's 7 p.m. I might just be making that up. Anyway, I'll put the link to that in the show notes for this episode because they prefer if you RSVP, I think you can still just show up, but they want to know how many people are coming, basically. And I do know that also that if you're like, oh no, I'm not in Minneapolis, it's like, it's going to be on YouTube later. So people can hear you and I.
Permission to record. So
yes,
more to come for all later.
Exactly. So if you want to hear us talk about actually Allison's book, that is what we're going to be doing there in person. And then also, if you're in the Minneapolis area and you want to come, we're going to have a vulgar history meetup on the next day. So on Wednesday, March 5th. So go to vulgarhistory.com/meetup to RSVP for that to get information about where we're meeting and what we're going to be doing. Because I need to know how many people are coming. I feel like this might be a big one. I know there's at least 3 people in Minneapolis who listen to this podcast. One of them is Lana Wood Johnson, and other people are there as well. Anyway, Allison, thank you so much. This is a delight, and I'm really excited for your book to be unleashed into the world. Does it feel weird to have this book unleashed into the world?
It does. I feel weirdly overwhelmed by this one. You'd think it'd get easier. This is my 3rd book, and every single time I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen? Is it going to be okay? But I love this book, and I'm excited to see it out in the world. My author copies got here last night at 9:30 p.m., so I now have them.
Oh, the actual books?
The actual books, yes.
Can you describe on this audio medium? Because the book is really beautiful. It is
really beautiful.
Gold.
They gave me a textured cover, which makes me so happy. It's this dark, moody, turquoisey blue, but it's got raised letters that are kind of shiny. And there's a pocket watch on the front that's in gold foil, which I love because I love a shiny thing. So It's beautiful.
As an object, it is delightful. And so again, people can get that. It's available, well, when people hear this episode 1 week from now, from in North America. And then hopefully someone is listening to this who is imprint in the UK or somewhere else. And they're like, us too. And then it can get to all these other places as well.
Call my agent. We will talk about that.
We'll figure it all out. Thank you, Allison. As per ever, I'm sure you'll be back on talking about something. Who knows?
Who knows?
But
I look forward to it. Thanks, Anne.
Always a pleasure. It's always such a pleasure to record with Allison Epstein. And I'm really, really, really excited to get to meet Allison in person in a couple weeks in Minneapolis, where, again, if you want to take part in the Minneapolis Vulgar History Tits Up Brigade meetup, go to vulgarhistory.com/meetup, MEETUP, and fill out the Google form there just so I know how many people to expect and so I can figure out what time of day works best for everybody. I'm really excited to meet you all. And then, of course, if you are there or in the area it'd be really great to see you also. And or, you can do the meetup and also come to the book event at Majors and Quinn, where Allison and I are going to be talking about Fagin the Thief on Tuesday, March 4th. And the link to go to that, you can go to AllisonEpstein.com for a list of all of Allison's appearances, but also just look at the show notes, scroll down wherever you're listening to this podcast, and there'll be a little thing where you can RSVP for the book talk as well. And it will be posted later on YouTube and probably on my Patreon or something, so you can hear us talking in person. It's going to be a fun time. And yes, so in terms of everything, ways that you can keep up with the show and me and what's going on, as we mentioned in this episode, I wrote a book too, Rebel of the Regency, the scandalous saga of Caroline of Brunswick, Britain's uncrowned queen, working title. My book is finished. I'm now in the midst of editing it and getting it ready. And if you want to follow along with the journée, look, I don't know what it's like. I'm just excited about everything to do with this book, and I want to let you know all the stuff. Once there's a cover, once you can pre-order it and stuff, I'm throwing those details everywhere I can. But the best places to keep up with me in this podcast and book news is by joining my mailing list. And this is a once monthly email that I'm going to send out with the latest news about live events, live vulgar history events, but also stuff about my book and what's going on, information about the podcast. And also I throw in some book and movie reviews there as well. It's all free. It's one email a month. I'm not going to spam you. And if you want to sign up for that mailing list, go to vulgarhistory.com/news. And then there's a little form you fill in. Just let me know you want to be on the newsletter. And I think there's going to be a newsletter coming out in the next couple of days. So it's a good time to sign up for it right now. And you can also keep up with me. I'm on Substack at vulgarhistory.substack.com. So every other week I post essays about women from history, and you can sign up there. That's free as well. I do want to emphasize that this podcast you're listening to right now is always free. The mailing list, free. Substack, free. I've got paid tiers in various places, but it's really important to me to have my information and most of the stuff I do available to everybody, no matter who you are and what your situation is financially or whatever. You can support the podcast on Patreon for free if you go to patreon.com/AnnFosterWriter. And that's where I post just sort of interesting news updates. For instance, this month, February 2025, it was announced that Canada Post, the postal system in Canada, every year lately, they've been releasing a special commemorative stamp for Black History Month. And this year, I was so excited to see that the stamp that they released is Marie-Joseph Angelique, who listeners of this podcast might remember from season 7, episode 1. This was last spring. We did an episode about her and how she was an icon and how she probably burned down Montreal in an act of resistance against her enslavement. And now she's a stamp, and which I really appreciate. And I think it's a really cool thing to be commemorating and sharing her story and making her more wider known in the context of just reckoning with our past as a colonial nation, etc. Anyway, so I shared the news about that on the Patreon, for instance, and other links about other things, like a letter of Mary Queen of Scots that was up for auction. And also, I'm just basically saying, if you want to keep up, if you want more than just a once monthly update, which is what the mailing list does, you can just kind of see what I'm doing, and also updates about the book and stuff are on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/AnnFosterWriter. You can join as a free member. And then if you're able to, and you want to financially support, you can also pledge $1 a month to get early ad-free access to all episodes of Vulgar History. If you pledge $5 or more a month, you get also access to bonus episodes, which is things like So This Asshole we mentioned in this episode. I did an episode, So This Asshole Charles Dickens, which started on the Patreon, and then eventually I shared it to everybody, but there's lots more episodes about shitty men from history there you can listen to. There's a whole archive of episodes of Vulgar Peace Theater, where Allison and I and our friend Lana Wood Johnson talk about costume dramas. We're all super busy at the moment. There will be new episodes of that soon. But if you join right now, there's the whole back catalog, and each episode is 3.5 hours long. So that can keep you entertained. And also, if you join the Patreon at $5 or more a month, you get to join our Discord, which is just a big group chat where we're all just kind of hanging out, sharing pictures of our pets, talking about the Vulgar History episodes, and just having a nice time in general. We also are proud to be affiliated with the jewelry brand Common Era Jewelry, which is a small woman-owned business out of New York City. So a bit Marm Mandelbaum vibes there, I guess. Just jewelry, New York City. No grifting going on. This is a legitimate operation. And so the designs on Common Era jewelry are inspired by history, especially classical history, and especially women from history and from mythology. Some of the women from mythology who are there are like Aphrodite, Athena, Circe, Clytemnestra, Persephone, and there's also historical figures like Boudica, Hatshepsut, Cleopatra, Ogle of Kiev, Sappho, lots of people who have come up in this podcast. And the jewelry, it's sort of like Tori, the owner, she designs these beautiful, just sort of like images of like their face that's on the jewelry. And then there's also jewelry inspired. Their esoterica collection is inspired by like jewelry that's been found in archaeological digs, looking at sites from ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. So just some beautiful objects there as well. So if you want to get some beautiful jewelry and just like feel like Marm with your gorgeous jewelry on, these pieces are available in solid gold as well as in more affordable gold vermeil. Some of the pieces also have jewels in them. Vulgar History listeners can always get 15% off all items from Common Era by going to commonera.com/vulgar or use code vulgar at checkout. You can also support this podcast and just spread the word about it by wearing Vulgar History merchandise or using Vulgar History merchandise. Like we have t-shirts, but you could also have practical things like a mug, a travel mug, a phone case, a tote bag with just various phrases from the podcast. And you can get that merchandise. Go to vulgarhistory.com/store if you're in the US. If you're outside the US, I recommend going to vulgarhistory.redbubble.com. If you want to get in touch with me, like Irma did, about her daughter Carmen's birthday and graduation, go to vulgarhistory.com. There's a form there where you can contact me to send me along a message. And you can also follow me on social media. I mean, I try to be in all the places. Like wherever people are, I want to be there talking about the podcast and available for you to reach out to me. So I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Threads at Vulgar History Pod. Next week, we're going to be looking at a classic re-release episode of Vulgar History from, I think it was season 2, Women Leaders from History and the Men Who Whined About It. And it's a really interesting, complex story that I was glad to be revisiting, and that's coming up next week. But in the meantime, people in Minneapolis, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Otherwise, people just listening to this, I'll talk to you next week. And until then, keep your pants on and your tits out. Fuck the Pinkertons. Vulgar History is researched, written, and hosted by Anne Foster. That's me. The editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. The Vulgar History Show image is by Deborah Wong. Transcripts are written by Aveline Malik. Find transcripts of recent episodes at vulgarhistory.com.
Listening to a podcast should be time well spent, and I promise it will be if you'll give this podcast a try. It's called Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and in every episode, I talk with leading experts on topics I know you will find fascinating. From why people can't keep secrets, what your favorite music says about you, why your pet acts in strange ways, and so much more. Something You Should Know is designed to give you information you can use in your life and give you great intel that you can share with others. I'm told it's a binge-worthy podcast. And with over 1,000 episodes, there's a lot to binge on. Something You Should Know has been ranked in the top of the Apple Podcast charts consistently for a long time. I know you're going to like this. I just need to get you to try it. Something You Should Know. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Contained herein are the heresies of Radolf Buntwine, erstwhile monk turned traveling medical investigator. Join me as I study the secrets of the divine plagues and uncover the blasphemous truth that ours is not a loving God, and we are not its favored children. The heresies of Radolf Buntwine, wherever podcasts are available.
From the podcast that brought you to each of the last lesbian bars in the country and back in time through the sapphic history that shaped them, comes a brand new season of cruising beyond the bars. This is your host, Sarah Gabrielli, and I've spent the past year interviewing history-making lesbians and queer folks about all kinds of queer spaces, from bookstores to farms to line dancing and much more.
For 11 years, every night women slept illegally on the common.
We would move down to the West Indies to form a lesbian nation.
Meg Kristen coined the phrase women's music, but she would have liked to say it was lesbian music.
And that's kind of the origins of the Comedy Hoover Collective.
You can listen to Cruising on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes air every other Tuesday starting February 4th.